Hello and welcome to a new video today. I was asked pretty many times to make a video about building dampers. First of all, sorry for the mess on this table, but this in principle shows up the reality, not the nice fancy pictures with nice tables, but this is the reality. I'm right now preparing my car for the next race this weekend in Andernach. So let me show you how I rebuild my dampers. Let's start with one damper as an example. This is the TRF super short big bore SSBB version 2. Version 2 means that the upper and lower mounts are having the big 5.8mm balls, which are fitting pretty nice to the TRF models. You can upgrade any kind of damper on the on-road models from Tamiya with this parts. They are used from TRF 420, so currently TRF 420, TRF 420X are using these big balls, and yeah, I clearly recommend them. Many drivers asked me what kind of O-rings I'm using. The answer is pretty easy, and it's also complex on the other hand. Currently I'm using the standard TRF 420X VG O-Rings. I will display the part number in the video description. This O-ring is pretty good in terms of compromise between leakage and moving friction. Meaning that it's moving without or almost without any friction and still having quite a good sealing property. When you compare it to other O-rings on the market, like for example on the Axon OR SO001, which is also quite a good O-ring and which is very similar to the one from Tamiya. In my opinion, the Axon ones seals a little bit better but has slightly higher friction. Therefore, I personally feel the Tamiya one is best for these dampers. And what can you do if your dampers are leaking? Or if they are excessively leaking? Then one possibility is to add shims under the O-ring, but please keep in mind that you shouldn't use 3mm shims. You should use 4mm shims in order not to touch the piston or the shock shaft. Otherwise you scratch it, and this might lead to other problems. So if you want to stop leaking, use a 0.1mm 4mm shim under the O-ring. If you place it on the up or on the lower side, that doesn't matter. And the leakage will be less, but you will have a higher friction because the O-ring compresses a bit more, and you will have some other disadvantages due to that. So let's start how I normally fill my dampers. The damper is empty. I just emptied it. And normally I do it before every big race. I rebuild my dampers. So first of all, make sure that it's of course clean. There's a little bit of old oil inside, but as I'm normally using always the same oil, doesn't matter for me. 450, much more. So let's start to fill. I'm filling up the damper until almost maximum. This is how I start. Then I move the piston slowly up and down, and then I already realize that there are some bubbles inside, and by slowly going up and down, you see that the bubbles are coming up. What I don't like, or what I rarely use, is the vacuum pump, because in my opinion it doesn't bring you a big advantage. So what I just do, I let the damper rest in the self-made damper holder, which is just the cap of the brake cleaner. Of course you can use also the one from Tamiya, but you see I have other use of this part for my tools. So just wait until the bubbles are out. It will take maybe some couple of seconds more, so I continue with damper number 2. And I always sort my dampers because the pre-tension of the spring is of course different on front and rear, and I mark the position of the damper on this brake cleaner cap. So these ones are the front ones and these ones are the rear ones, so I don't mix them, and then I can just rebuild, put the springs on, put it in the car back, and the ride height is normally okay with that. Coming back to damper number 1, just moving up again slowly and down, and I already cannot see any bubbles. There was maybe 1 or 2 bubbles at the first stroke, so quite okay. I just add a little bit, maybe 1 drop more. It doesn't need to be filled to the maximum, so it shouldn't be flat. It can be slightly shaped inwards, because you will anyway put the bladder on, and by putting the bladder on and then closing the damper, you will anyways lose some oil. You will also lose some oil because the shock shaft will go inside during you close the damper, and the volume needs to go somewhere. So in principle, I take the bladder now, I make sure it's clean. This is clean now, so I put it on. And what I normally then do, I take just a normal wrench, and I touch the bladder from top like that, and make sure that there's no air inside, of course. Then I move it up. How much do I move up? That's a very good question. I move up almost to the maximum, to the top. Sometimes I move to the top. I just make sure that it doesn't lift. This is important. It lifts a little bit because some oil is spreading out, but it's okay. I can lift it really to the very end, and just tapping on the top of the bladder like that. That's okay. Then I take the fancy top end, I put it on, and finally I take the upper cap, and when I screw down the cap, I make sure to put the finger on the top end and push it down all the time, so no more air can go inside. So I now turn it completely, I lock it up like that. And then I take the towel, just a paper towel, and really lock it up. It doesn't need to be too tight, because sometimes you turn it up pretty tight, and then I have sometimes really the issue to open it again because it's so tight. So it's just like that. That's totally enough. As soon as no oil will leak on the top. But I normally never see TRF dampers leaking on the top side. They always, when they leak, they start leaking on the bottom side. So now it's closed, and now you see a final effect. If I push it in, it comes out a little bit, maybe 1 millimeter, and that's totally okay for me. Small amount of rebound. If I pull it out, it doesn't really go in, so I think it's a good compromise between compression and pulling. So now the damper is ready, and I put the spring on. And this time I want to try an Ananach, something new but old. It's the HLS 2.7 from Axon, red color. I lock it with a retainer. I make sure everything is okay, and now the damper is ready rebuilt. Always make sure if you compress the damper that you always compress it upside down, like upside up, I mean, not upside down. If you compress upside down, you risk that you pull air in the damper. Also, if the damper is installed in the car and you turn the car upside down and you operate the suspension, then normally the dampers are starting to leak. They somehow don't like the gravity. Don't ask me why. I didn't think about it. It's just my own observation. So always compress when it's upside up, and then it's okay. That was all in principle. Thank you for watching this short video. I hope you enjoy. Sometimes I'm also asked about other option parts on the dampers. Except of spring, I think there's no option part really needed on a damper. There are, of course, different bladders, and there are different lower inserts, but I tried different ones already and I didn't really feel a difference to the standard one. So in my opinion, the standard one is totally enough, and I would rather focus on other areas of the car to improve than the damper. Thanks for watching, and yeah, enjoy rebuilding your dampers.